Welcome back to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon, James Bell. Welcome back to the podcast.
I'm maintaining this slightly dodgy voice that I've had for the last week, mate. I like to keep consistency in our podcasting, and I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with this really deep down approach. How are you, man? Did you get back from St. George, Utah? Okay.
I am in one piece, and as people are going to be noticing, things are a little bit different this week because we've both had a few little travel challenges the last couple of days, which mean that we're not able to record how we normally want. So we apologize in advance that the audio is a little bit different this week. But we are determined to create content for our audience. We actually I tried manically to get somebody to replace you this week, Jimbo, and alas, we couldn't make it work because everybody went, the sexiest voice in triathlon. Those shoes are too big to fill.
Yeah, I think the word irreplaceable springs to mind, to be honest.
I mean, it's honestly how I describe you to most people, to be honest. Irreplaceable. When I'm trying to replace you very, very often. Welcome back to doing it on the internet, mate. We were obviously in St. George last week, and we are back to doing it on our preferred method, so we don't have to be in the same room as each other. But we're back from St. George, mate. Now, as I said, because this is a little bit different, we have to mix things up a little bit because we weren't sure if you were going to be able to get on the podcast because of your issues around travel. So we're going to do a slightly different episode. But before we get to that, James, this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by four-time world champion Chris McCormack. James, I always ask you what's something you like. But as I said, it's not a normal episode, so I'm not even going to bother with that week. I'm just going to say to everybody, MX is good. Come and join it. It's a good time. Support the podcast, all that stuff. Jimbo.
But I have something. Because,
okay, tell me.
We were just in St. George, Utah. We were watching the biggest race of the year so far. And one thing that I really like about MX Endurance, and something that I haven't really experienced myself because it's been locked down for so long and we haven't been able to travel, we haven't been at races, the ability to see people on course in that kit with the cross on it as they're coming up towards you when they're racing, mate, is second to none. The MX Endurance kit really stands out. It was cool.
No, it was good. It was really good to see the guys over there. There's a bunch racing, bunch not racing. I always love catching up with the community, so very, very good. But let's get into it, mate. St. George obviously has happened. We were there. We have a new world champion and a new former world champion. We saw some incredible racing. We saw some absolutely brutal racing. We saw tough conditions. Where do you want to start, James Bale?
Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? It was an early start, wasn't it? Because, we kind of did, last week we did the sort of build-up. We've done all the bells and whistles around it. I think we should focus on the meat of the event itself, which was race day. It was an early start for me and you. We drove the car into St. George, parked it in somewhere I probably shouldn't have parked it, and spent all morning worrying about that. And we got the early morning shuttles, the VIP shuttles, mate. We don't. No expense spared.
That's how we roll,
no expense spared. Hey, we got the VIP shuttles into the pro race start, and we watched the professional.
Didn't the guy next to you on the bus shoot himself while you're on your way down?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I got sat next to some German bloke, and I think he shot himself on the way in. I think he timed his morning coffee badly. And then we arrived there and we watched the start of the races, didn't we? And we both of us kept forgetting that there was going to be a cannon going off about 3 foot.
I'd forgotten about that. Scared the shit out of me. I then shat myself. You sat next to somebody on the bus who shat himself, and then I proceeded to twice when the cannon went off. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. That was something.
I dropped my phone twice when that cannon went off. I was busy taking pictures. But the atmosphere was electric. The pro athletes were lined up, and it was great to see. I'd like to say that I called the first out of the swim on the men.
You did?
I did. Daniel Beckergaard, my pick for the win, may not have translated across the day, but it was brilliant to see the pros coming out of the swim in such high spirits and off onto the bike. And that was the point where we got the shuttles back, didn't we? But separately, because you were going to run it, and then you bottled it.
I did. I decided that I was more interested in watching the action unfold than going for a 26-kilometer run. I think I was looking at it, I was like, I just don't want to be that guy like cutting across the course and stuff. So we just took the shuttle back. And I'm glad we did, because I got back into town, and me and Fernanda, who I know listens to the podcast, hello Napoleon, we went and hired e-bikes. So we started zipping around the course. I got to see a bunch of I saw the lead women sort of cut through how the course had a big cross where I know you know this, James, but for our listeners, where they would sort of go down, then they go to the Veil Loop, come down, go back up and do Snow Canyon. So we were there. We saw Kat and Skye and Danny there. And I think at that point was just as Danny was starting to sort of break away a little bit from Kat. And then Kat had a decent gap back to Lisa and Skye. And that's when we were like, okay, shit, Kat's looking the goods today. And then from there, what did we do then? I think went back into town, then just started zipping around different points. I went out, saw the boys come through before they went back up to Snow Canyon.
We had a bit of a division of labour, didn't we, on race day? Because you'd hired the e-bikes. So you were out on course in the heat, in the sun, diving from location to location, being our man on the ground. Whereas I had the hard job, I felt, of going from VIP tent to VIP tent, drinking the cold beers and talking the talk and shaking the hands, which was good fun. I spent some time in the official Ironman VIP tent to begin with, looking over the big screen, and then walked up to the De Boer wetsuit VIP area because they actually had they were in a brewery, so they had a range of cold beers on tap, and we sat with them.
You sampled them all, did you?
I did. I worked my way through all of them, and and various people came and went. Had a chat with was watching on the big screen in there, and also live on the balcony as the bike and run took place with the Norwegian coaching team. And they were filling me in because I was like, look, is Bloomy going to blow? Is he going to blow? And they were like, no, he does not blow. It will not.
He doesn't,
happen.
mate. He doesn't, hey.
And so it transpired, eh?
Well, let's look at that race because I think the men's race, I think let's start with the men's race. As you said, Daniel Becker got out of the water with a decent little pack. We saw Carl Smith, who was right up there. And then that group on the bike of, I think, 5, it was Beckergaard, Braden Curry, Carl Smith, I think Florian Angett, and I'm forgetting somebody else, and maybe Chris Lefferman, potentially. I'm not sure if he ran through, but then Kristian was a fair bit down. It was surprising, actually. He was not as far down as I expected. But from what he said, and I had some chats with him after, you had some chats with him after, and he's done plenty of media, but he was sort of realizing he wasn't going to close that gap. Those guys went hard, and instead what Kristian decided to do was wait for Cam Worth to ride through and then go with Cam. Which I think proved quite fortuitous for him because that gap then got a lot smaller. And what we really saw it come down to was, I mean, to be honest, after the bike, when you had that, those guys getting him, Braden Curry went out like a bat out of hell. I had everybody messaging me going, can somebody tell Braden to settle down? Like, Tim, tell him to slow down. It's a marathon. He's going too hard. But I think you could see that the strategy was obviously that he knew that those Norwegian, or Kristian in particular, was coming. And he wanted to do everything he can to give himself as much runway as possible, basically. Even
from what we'd been hearing before the race about the Norwegian camp and how ill they were, and with Gustav pulling out, thus proving that he was ill. And so our conversation in the pre-race talk was, is this just fluff and bluster? Is it kind of like a, oh yeah, we're really ill, and then they turn up and smash bollocks out of everybody. But with Gustav actually pulling out, that proved they were ill. And then Kristian was throwing up before the swim, and with that gap on the bike, I saw that gap. And without any of that chat, I'd have thought, well, there's a chance he can close this on the run. But my brain had switched him off at this point because I was like, well, Gustav's pulled out, so they are ill. There's a gap on the bike. He hasn't managed to go with the leaders. He's not looking like he's powering through. And I thought he's not going to close this gap on the run.
Yeah.
I'd written him off,
mate. I know, yeah. Mate, I'll be honest. Even before the race, I didn't think it was his. I thought, as you said, and I don't think we said it last week, but we'd heard rumors in the lead up that they were both pretty sick. And then when Gustav got thinking, it was still the word that Kristian wasn't well either. And I've got to learn maybe to not, because again, I've been so vocal about how much I think Kristian's an incredible athlete. I didn't think he was. I thought it's against him. I thought that they'd maybe both gotten sick and they'd fucked a little bit.
Yeah,
and we were we did not do very well with our picks in the men's race, to be honest, mate, at all.
We did not. My pick for the win came 7th. And,
how good was it, though? Christ almighty, that run! I was there. I was there at the moment. I was in the De Boer tent at one point, and I know it was just as Kristian caught up and passed Braden Curry, and I was sitting there with his coach. And you heard him go, "Yep, he's won it." Like there was no. They're like, oh, he's passed. Okay, he's won. He's won it. Like that's it. Day over. I'm like, mate, it's fucking Ironman. Like, it's a long way to
It's
go. You don't know
confidence.
it.
Yeah. And that's what he said to me as well. I was like, he could still blow because he's been sick. And he was like, no, he doesn't blow. If he's going,
Yeah.
he's going.
Super interesting. And then, I mean, let's talk to the key sort of things that Kristian runs away, wins it, runs a 2:38 marathon on what is got to be a brutal. Like, I cannot believe, like, any doubters now have to be like, okay, shit, this kid is fucking legit, because that run on 2:38 in that course is mental. What was his time? 7:49 on a course at 2,500 meters of elevation. Like, it's mind blowing. But then you had that Braden Curry, Lionel Sanders thing where Lionel caught him with like 400 meters to go. Fuck me, mate. That was electric. Like, being at the finish line and being amongst, like, I was behind the finish line. I was in with the media and the managers and everything. Fuck, mate. That was something to behold. Watching Lionel coming down the finish thing. Oh, man. Like, there's so many moments on race day that put tears in my eyes, and that was absolutely one of them. Like, just, I would have loved to see Lionel win it. I think second, when you consider what Kristian did second, is like, it's not like a normal second to me. Like, Kristian is an incredible athlete who's going to change the sport forever. So for Lionel to be the best of the rest, fuck, mate, that's all. Like, that's such an achievement for him.
I saw an interview with Lionel afterwards, and I loved it because he was saying, my attitude has changed now. Old me would have chased the bike and chased it and chased it and chased it. And he said he was listening to an interview with Sebastian Kienle, which had affected him, where he said, Kienle says, if it hurts, I slow down. And Lionel was like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that. And he said he raced his race that day. He got the best out of himself he could on the bike, and then he allowed himself to perform on the run, as opposed to pushing the bike too hard and then failing on the run. And he said he got the absolute optimum performance he could out of himself on that day. So for him, it felt like a win, because that second place wouldn't have happened if he'd gone old school.
I spent a fair bit of the day with his coach, Mikael Eden, and there's a few things I was chatting with him about Lionel. Like, firstly, like, why was he on the older canyon? And I know there's been a lot of discussion about whether it was a weight saving thing or what it was. And he said it's just the geometry. He said that new bike is just a little off for Lionel, and he can't get the right position that he needs. So he's gone back to the older model because the position suits him a lot better. I think he was like the length is 2 centimeters longer now or something. So I thought that was interesting. But I mean, proof's in the pudding, mate. Like, I think you talked about that interview. I saw it too, and I saw a lot of the conversations he was having at the press conference and everything. I really feel like it's like that. He's sort of been stumbling around in the dark and sort of taking swings, but it's like, oh, he's an experienced athlete now. And not only has he been doing this for a while, he's actually learning the lessons, and he's taken them aboard and going, oh shit, that didn't work last time. Let's not do it. And I fucking love to see it, mate, because as we've said so much on this show, Lionel frustrates the bejesus out of me because you know how good he is, and he just keeps doing these things that like derail his own performance. So to see him on Saturday just get the fuck out of his own way and have the sort of race that we know he's capable of, man, I was fucking so happy to see him have that performance. Like, it made me, I was cheering for him as he was coming after Braden, and Braden's a Kiwi. Like, Braden Curry was my dark horse pick for the race. Like, I was there going, come on, Lionel, mate, you fucking legend, do this. Like, what a performance. It was something. Like, what a gutsy effort.
Yeah, he seems at peace with himself within that performance.
Things seem to have clicked,
Yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm not saying he's happy with second place, but he's at peace with what he can get out of himself on a certain day, which is allowing him to achieve better results than he would have done. Because old Lionel would have gone too hard on the bike and popped on the run and finished maybe 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever. But to see him draw that out of him and be not happy with second place, but to be at peace with that because he knew it was the best he could get, I think that'll allow him to find further success in the future, mate. I see Lionel as someone who, he's kind of like a James Hunt type character back in the 70s in F1, where he's a hell of a racer, and one year something just needs to happen and he could win that championship.
See,
mate, I don't say he's gonna. But if he has that random year, I could see him as that guy who won it once because something happened and Lionel was there fucking go, all right, game on, I'm here.
Well, that's kind of how I saw this year for him, if that makes sense. Like, I know that in the lead up to the race, I said this to you. I was like, this is his shot, mate. Like, I think I was saying to you the night before, again, I have no idea what actually happened. I was like, I have this fear that Lionel's going to suddenly see all these people pulled out. Because again, the day before, after we'd released our episode, Alistair and Gustav withdrew. And I was thinking, shit, Lionel's going to be thinking, fuck, I could win this. This is my best shot at it. And I was worried that would get to him. And I'm glad it didn't. Like, I'm glad that he had that such well-executed race. And then Braden Curry, mate, as I said, dark horse pick for me. Did seem to go out too hard on the run because he like looking at his pace, he was going backwards at the end. But to hold on for third, incredible performance from an athlete who hasn't been seen much lately because he's been in New Zealand. And we are talking about, like, honestly, one of the best athletes in the sport. And it's lovely. I loved that he was there to be able to remind us of that again. Chris Lefferman, I saw Brad Colt put out a tweet and he's like, he's the best USA triathlete. He just never tells you that he is. And I thought, fucking hell, that's a pretty good assessment of Chris Lefferman. Hey, he is class, mate. He has been up there or nearabouts every single race that he has done. He was, again, fourth place. What a performance. And then, like, man, just, it was a day. It was a day. That men's race was fucking something, hey?
Yeah, it really was. It was something to behold and watch transpire. I wish the tracker had been working a bit better throughout the day because I was losing a grip on where people were a little bit.
The thing to talk about, though, Kristian Blummenfelt. Now, we've been very vocal for a long time that we see how good this kid is. And I think people are starting to jump on the bandwagon a bit more. But I've said this to you a lot. Like, you know, he said he was going to win Kona. Kona didn't happen. People were saying this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He has to respect the distance. Second Ironman, wins the World Championship. I understand it's St. George, but fuck me, if that was not a harder course than Kona, I don't know what is. Mate, I said this to you after the race. Kristian Blummenfelt's 28 years old. We have the first person in the history of the sport to do an Olympic gold medal, a World Triathlon Championship, and then an Ironman World Championship in the same year. And we're not talking 12 months. At this point in time, it's like, what, 7 months? Yeah. He's 28 years old, James. He could win fucking 10 of these, mate. He could win 10 of them. And he could probably win an Olympic gold medal, and he could probably win 5, 6, 7, 10, 70.3 World Championships. What do you think this performance from Kristian means for his position in the sport?
So within the last 7 months, 8 months, he's won an Olympic gold medal, WTCS World Championship, and the Ironman World Championship. So that's short course and long course. Short course consistency and long course, just one incredible performance, coupled with a few others along the way as well to get himself ready. So he's 28 years old. But he's already in the conversation as one of the greats of the sport, just in the last 7 months and what he's achieved. Now, going past that, there is an opportunity at the age that he's at with the performances we've seen for him to absolutely solidify and put that question of who is the greatest male triathlete of all time out of reach. But we'll see whether that happens. At the moment, I just want to enjoy the fact that he's already in that conversation just within a 7 or 8 month period.
Fucking hell, it was impressive, wasn't it? Like, I mean, I do hate the fact that he did it on that fucking hideous bike. Like, it does bother me a little bit. Nothing will ever convince me that ugly bikes go fast. All right, the beauty of professional cycling is part of it is the aesthetic, and everybody knows pretty bikes go fast. That bike was a fucking abomination. So, all right, fine, but his performance is still there, and. Do you think we'll see people wanting to buy bikes like that now? Yep. I think it might have even been Mikkel was telling me that since the Kristian and Gustav signed with Giant's value doubled or something. Yeah.
What was it, Mikkel? Mikkel caught us throughout the day. We were standing by T1, weren't we, looking at the bikes?
Yep.
And Mikkel went past us and tapped us on the shoulder and said, "Not a fucking word about that with that bike."
Yeah, don't you say that was good. That was very, very good. And I also, you can tell this though. What did Kristian say to you when he saw you at the finish line? What was the first thing he said to you?
So you saw him first, didn't you? As because you were behind the finish line, so you had a
we're best mates. So me and Kristian are good friends. So we're best friends. We had a good Diva Meaningful, analyze his performance, all that stuff. You weren't there for that, obviously, because
you weren't. And then you pootled off. So the second best friend in the world, much like the second biggest cycling fan in the world. I came around the corner and he was dressed in his in all his
paraphernalia
and the green stuff they put on them and all that, and he pointed directly at me and said, "I wasn't on your list of picks, mate." And I was like, "Look, bro, this is what happens when you tell everybody you're sick. You don't get on people's lists." But then he asked me for then just to rub salt in some of your wounds. He did ask me for a picture, so we had a picture. Did you? You obviously got your picture, didn't you?
Yeah, it's in my. I got a mental picture, mate. I
Yeah,
didn't
you
get
took
the
a mental picture.
I didn't get the. Again, me and Christian are such good mates, mate. It'd be weird. It'd be awkward. Be like, hey, mate, can I, best friend? Can we get a photo? That wouldn't go down.
Yeah,
so
I
well,
suppose
so.
it's kind of like me asking you for a selfie, isn't it? Eh?
It was awkward how many selfies you wanted with me though last week, mate. So I mean, maybe I should have felt comfortable asking Christian.
I've never spent time with someone as committed to content as you are, and it's
mate, it's not an accident. Not an accident, is it?
Yeah, you taught me some things last week, mate. You taught me how to step into the shoes of the influencer, and I've learned some stuff. And here I go.
Now, the other thing as well is obviously no Gustav Eden, and from what we were told, Gustav would have been Christian by 10 minutes. Which I find mind-blowing. But also, I'm like, at this point in time, if they say something, I just have to believe them.
Yeah, I mean, the Gustav question is one of those sort of... Everybody keeps saying, oh, Gustav would have done this and Gustav would have done that. But you've got to be there to do it. So at some point, hopefully, we'll start seeing that.
Well, that's the point I was about to... I saw Brad Colt put up a tweet today, basically saying that it sounds like Gustav is planning on racing Kona now.
You know, I
which,
saw that as
to
well.
me... I'm like, ooh, okay, this makes it interesting. So, and again, I should just sit and enjoy what's happened. But there's also that part of me going, fucking hell, Kona, Christian, Gustav, Jan, Ali, Lionel, sounding pretty good, mate. Like that sounded like a pretty good race.
I think Jan Frodeno's got the arsenal, if he's on form, to put enough damage into the Blummenfelt on the bike to have enough time in hand on the run to hold on. Gustav being there as well throws a different game on that.
This is the first time where I'm ever starting to actually doubt Frodo's run, though, isn't it? Hey, because Frodo's like what, a low 240s runner?
Yeah.
And on that course, Christian ran a 238, mate.
Like, yeah, man. How much time does Frodo need in the bank at Kona to distance?
That's the question. Fucking hell, it's going to be good. But look, we'll worry about that for another episode. Men's race was absolutely incredible. We have a new Ironman World Champion, Kristian Blummenfelt, as we said. What a king. That photo we did the next day laying in bed with all the paraphernalia on, amazing, probably one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah, and the PTO put there out with the surround with all the doubters' tweets.
But it was about the bike. I thought that was because it's like, I doubted the bike. I think the bike looks fucking stupid. I still am very happy that Kristian, like, it should have been like...
wrong, yeah. It's still, I'm sure it goes fast. I just think it's ugly as fuck.
But I thought their post should have been more like, this guy doesn't respect the distance. What does a short course athlete know about Ironman? Like they're the comments I thought they should have put up there rather than the bike's ugly, because I'm like, no, they're right. The bike's still ugly. You can put this stuff, whatever. But look, mate, there's another race that happened, and one that I actually think was more significant for a number of reasons. Obviously, the fact that Kat finished second, but Daniela Ryf is your 2021 in 2022 Ironman World Champion. Mate, that women's race was something.
It really was. It really was something, because I've now obviously we have a vested interest with Kat doing well, and watching Kat come second and with the performance that she did put out there was emotional and incredible, and really it was beyond the sensation was beyond anything I've experienced before, of being that proud to be part of someone's journey and to see her do as well as she did. But to be as wrong as we were about Daniela Ryf was also a sensation I wasn't expecting, because we both said, with Ryf's recent form, she's probably not going to have this. She may be able to go on the bike. She may have a bit of distance, but she won't have the run to hold off someone like Kat or, any of the other out there, Annie Haug. To see her put together a sort of masterclass in how to win a world championship, to go off the front on the bike with Kat to go with her, but for then Daniela to go solo and put some distance between them, and then to come off the bike. Mate. Yeah.
7 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that.
About that. And then to come off the bike with that gap, but to just keep building and keep put the pace.
Put time in a Kat. Again, Kat, one of the best runners in the sport. Danny put time into her on that run.
And to see Danny come down the finishing straight, break that tape and hold up the 5 towards the camera was just amazing. And I couldn't take my sunglasses off. I had tears in my eyes.
Mm. It was electric. Again, electric's a word I keep saying, but that's absolutely how I describe this. Like, I mean, I'm not. I was very vocal about saying that I've been backing Danny a whole. I actually had somebody message me and was like, "Thank you for not picking Danny in this race because she finally came good." Because I was joking about saying every time I pick her, she doesn't go well, and then I'm eventually going to not pick her, and she's gonna do it. I was very much of the opinion. I think we both were that. To me, Danny was the really unknown factor in that race because you can never count Daniela Ryf out, and it was either going to be one of her more recent performances or she's going to do her thing. And if she did her thing, nobody in that field could beat her because Daniela Ryf is on another stratosphere, basically. She does world titles, mate. And we saw Danny that we saw the Danny that we all have known for so long. And mate, it made me so happy to see like that happen because she is such a legend of the sport. And yeah, mate, I was bloody stoked. Like I don't have words, to be honest. Like, it was really emotional. It was a really emotional thing. And the way she did it, mate, like, we talk about Frodo's 2019 masterclass. This was Danny's, mate. She put it together. She didn't swim. She had a really good swim, just dictated the bike, and then just did her run. And, mate, it was something to behold. It was... it's funny as well because we were at the after party and I was saying, she's going to retire, isn't she? And we're sitting there going, oh my God, I think she's going to retire. And she didn't, thank God. She said she's, looking forward to racing cattle a lot more and stuff like that. But, mate,
this brings into stark focus something we were saying a couple of weeks ago, which is that, it felt like she was faltering. It felt like the end of an era and that she was faltering and she wasn't going to win the World Championship again. Then she does something like this and she wins it in such a dominant fashion. And you suddenly remember she's only 33.
Correct.
And you think...
We talk about Kristian, 28.
Yeah, and you think, hang on a second. It could not be. It ain't over. And she could have many more of these left in her. And I love that. And so much respect for her as a champion and a performer. But then,
mate, let's talk about...
What were you going to say?
I thought you were done, so you keep going, and then I'll jump in.
I was just going to say, but then to be standing there, we were watching Daniela do her celebrations, and then to wait for Kat to come in was amazing. And the depth that she went to on that run, as soon as she crossed the finish line, she staggered sideways because it was like it was over, and she'd gone as deep as she could in that moment. And what a performance!
Well, you talked about the tracker not working. So we were following it pretty closely, and I was out on course watching Kat a fair bit at different points on the bike and stuff. And when I went to the finish line, on the tracker, it had Daniela Ryf, Annie Haug. And I was like, oh, okay, Annie's past Kat. I knew that Kat was not having the best day out there. So I was sort of like, okay, like third place is incredible. And then next minute, Kat Matthews finishes second. I nearly had a heart attack, mate. Like, because I had, I guess, I'd come to terms with it in my own head that Kat was going to finish third. So that hearing her finish in second, I literally was like, what the hell is going? Raced out there to see it, mate. What a performance. And, debut, her first ever Ironman World Championship to come second to Daniela Ryf. Like, I think that the narrative for Kat, it's so fantastic in so many ways because, firstly, incredible performance, but you have Kat beat the defending champion Annie Haug, who is the great runner, and Kat dug so deep and held her off, even though she wasn't having her best race. Like, that narrative was so well. And you even heard Kat saying her after racing, like, how happy she was that Danny was back. So, like, to have Danny, the previous champion, win again and come back to form incredible. Kat, the newcomer, beat the past champion. Like, that, I just felt like it was such a I've said it a lot. I love the story. I love the fairy tale. And to me, that podium was such a fairy tale, like such a great, there's so many layers to the narrative of that race. And for Kat to have the performance she had, gutsy, swam really, really well, did what she said she was going to do, took it on the bike. Like, I'm not here to participate. I'm here to win. And you heard Danny talk about how she really appreciated and respected the way that Kat sort of went about that. And it sort of made Danny lift to another level. And then just gritted out on that run, mate, was fucking so impressive.
Yeah. And being chased by Annie Howe, who is a hell of a runner.
Oh, mate,
And to know that Kat was going deep and it was hard and it wasn't a performance that came easy, to know that she went to that level in order to keep Annie behind her, and to see then Annie cross the line a few minutes later and be absolutely smoked as well and just sit down as soon as she crossed the line.
She wasn't well, hey.
No,
she wasn't well.
There was some moments within this whole experience where you were just like, that transcends the result itself.
Yeah.
Like when Kat was waiting to go up on the podium and she saw Ruth Astle cross the line, and she just sacked off the going on the podium in that moment to go and give her a hug, and I got such a cracking picture of that.
Yeah, you did, mate.
And it was cool. It was cool.
Skye Moench, 4th place, also making her debut at Ironman World Championships. Again, phenomenal. I love Skye. I was so happy to see Skye, make the most of that opportunity. We spent some time with Skye at the afterwards celebration. She was, you can just tell she's such a fan of everything Ironman does, and she was really enjoying the stories that they were telling about, the experiences and that stuff. Like, she's a true connoisseur of the sport, I guess you want to say.
Aficionado is the word.
Aficionado, man. Like she was basically taking notes, to be honest. Like we were sort of having a bit of a chat because I found it a bit frustrating to have Skye be like, "Shh, respect it." I was like, "Oh, sorry, Skye." Like
it's true. It's true. Well, we were sat there for a while, and she said, "I wish this was double the length because I want to hear more."
I actually heard that if Ironman are looking for somebody to test out their speeches on, Skye would like to put up her hand and volunteer. But Ruth Astle as well, mate. Like I said this last week that I felt like there was something special for Ruth, and for her to pass Lisa Nord in the final stages of that race and finish 5th. I mean, mate, again, phenomenal. And I said this to you, like Ruth was the defending age group world champion, and this time she comes 5th, and she was 43 minutes faster than the fastest age grouper on the day. You want to talk about some pro or some amateurs that go pro that don't really make it? Ruth Astle is a professional athlete, mate. Like that is a significant jump in performance since that.
Absolutely,
that race,
she has more than proven herself worthy of the pro ranks, having stepped up from the age group amateur level.
Mate, just what a week! I really loved the race being in St. George. I found the dynamic on the race day so much different to what it was like in Kona. As a spectator, it was much easier for me to get around and see the action in different points. I really, really, really love St. George. And I the thing is, I heard that the broadcast wasn't great. I heard a lot of people saying that they heard the word Didi about 53,000 times and it wasn't the best coverage. But I wonder, like, one of the things I was watching with Danny's celebration, where she was, there was a lot of emotion at that finish line. Do you think she cared that it wasn't in Kona? Like, do you think Daniela Ryf gave a shit that race was in Kona or not? Or do you think she was
you can't speak for somebody, can you? Because we're not in her head. But if that was me in that moment, then I think because of the amount of people that had doubted her leading into this race and had written her off, that might be the most important race of a career so far. Because, irrespective of wherever it is, the field was strong. And it was a world championship, and she came out and she went old school, and she showed them how a champion races a world championship, and fuck wherever it is, because
that's what I wonder, because there's the overwhelming narrative in the lead up to this was, well, it's not a real world championship because it's not in Kona, and I wonder if, like, now that people have experienced it and saw what happened, I wonder if that's still the thought of people, or people like, no, this was still a great race to watch. Like, what I guess we've been saying is it doesn't need to be in Kona to be an incredible world championship. And I hope, because I think it was incredible. I think both of those races were amazing. I wonder whether others now think, yeah, okay, maybe you're right, Tim and James. Maybe I can stop DMing you abuse whenever you say that it shouldn't always be in Kona, because the race was just a phenomenal race. So
I know that we've gone over our reasons for not thinking it should be in Kona all the time, a million times. But another reason that I think needs raising is accessibility for supporters and spectators, because it ain't as expensive a trip to get to St. George as it is to get to Kona. You're more likely to have.
St. George was awesome, man.
It really was. You're more likely to have a buzzing environment. Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to St. George, Utah, because what a friendly place. What a place full of such lovely, lovely, welcoming people.
It was honestly, I've gushed about it so much. I fucking love St. George, mate. Like I went up and down Snow Canyon a bunch of times. I know that we had some moments where we're just like, how good is this? And every time I was on my bike and I'd stop somewhere, I think I told you the story about I saw these guys on motorbikes with like the cut off leather jackets walking up to me at a petrol station. I was like, fuck, here we go. And they're like, oh, where you from? You here for the race? Oh, we're doing the bike march. Oh, it's so good you're here. Like every interaction I had with people in St. George was overwhelmingly positive. And as somebody who's traveled for races a lot, this is not something I'm used to. Like, guys, for those of you who are skeptical, like I cannot emphasize this. If you are one of those people who's been to Kona and hates the way the locals treat you there, St. George was the polar opposite. At no point did I feel like we weren't wanted. Like the whole town frothed over this event. It was insanity to me. Like I've never experienced that sort of welcome at any place I've ever been for a race.
I agree. It was beyond anything I was imagining before going in. But the warmth was spectacular.
Well, you know what, Jimbo? We've gone through our St. George stuff. I guarantee we're going to be talking about this race and the significance of those performances for weeks and weeks to come. Congratulations to everybody who podiums, who finished, all the age groupers, all the amateurs. Amazing stuff. We're now going to move on to, we're going to talk. I sat down today and spoke with a friend of the podcast, Tyler Mislawchuk, about the arena games that happened last weekend. Now, I know you're going to be really disappointed, James. Tyler Mislawchuk.
Who's that guy?
He's a professional.
Did he used to race triathlon?
No, remember there were rumors that this Canadian was going to race Oceanside and St. George, got the wild card to St. George.
That guy.
Yeah, that guy.
I forgot about him.
Yeah. So I've deprived you, James, of your opportunity to talk about the arena games. So I spoke with Tyler about the arena games, and then we do a bit of a Yokohama preview because Yokohama is happening this weekend as well. And we'll be back afterwards for download on the PTO. All right, well, we have got Tyler Mislawchuk, a Canadian triathlete and a friend of the podcast, who's here today to talk to us all about short course racing. Tyler, you're joining us from a very tiny little hotel room in Yokohama. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Tiny it is. There's about one pillow, and if I roll over, I'm out of the bed. But other than that, pretty good. I'm happy to be back somewhere, back racing, race week, all that jazz. I'll tell you that's for sure.
I was going to say, mate, I reckon you probably suit Japan very well because you're only a little man yourself. So the little hotel rooms are probably, like, for a bigger person, they'd really struggle. Where you're like, this is quite comfortable.
Yeah, it's probably one of the only places, too, that I'm above average height. I'll definitely not in Canada. I'm a small boy. You're correct.
So obviously I talk to you a lot, working with you, and we're in touch a fair bit, but it's been a while since you've been on the podcast. You did a bonus podcast with us last year, but how have things been since, obviously, the injury at the Olympics? How's things looking? How's the return, the comeback, all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, I tore my Achilles probably about 2 weeks before the Olympics. I didn't know it was torn until after the race when I kind of got an MRI. I knew it was bad, but didn't know how bad. Kind of did a whole long thing of rehab, and then I found myself probably 3.5 months later racing Abu Dhabi at the end of the year, which was one of the races counting towards this year, but pretty cool course. Get to race on the F1 circuit if there's any F1 fans. I am, so it's a pretty cool race. But I only actually did one outdoor run before Abu Dhabi, where I came sixth. So I surprised myself a bit there, and since then I've kind of been building back slowly. If anyone has dealt with a tendon, it's not like a bone injury. You kind of have to play it by ear, and you also have to. There's no like after 6 weeks you're good to go and 100%. It's more a slow build up, and you take it as it comes because you might have little flare ups, etc. But I'm happy to say that I'm at least healthy now. I'm ready to race Yokohama. I think it'll be a build throughout the year for me, so this will definitely be good. But it definitely won't be my best work all season. I'll tell you that. Well, if it is, it might be. You never know with triathlon, but it surprised myself.
Now, I have a few questions to ask you, Matt, before we get into the meat and bones of this. Is that I've been hearing lots of whispers this year about you basically making your appearances at some races. I heard rumors that you were going to be racing Oceanside. I heard rumors you got to start to the Ironman World Championships in St. George over the weekend. I may have started these rumors myself, but what is this, mate? When are we going to see you start to take the leaf out of Martin Van Riel and Kristian Blummenfelt and start dabbling in all
Kona this year? I heard there's also a rumor that I could be there. Maybe a spectator, but I could be there. Anyone knows I did 4 months in Kona last year, so I'm no stranger. I've rode that course probably more times than most of the Ironman pros. My soul is somewhere out there. Maybe a piece of my Achilles is on that highway as well. I don't know.
It's funny when I was talking about your race in the Oceanside. Like again, I think I told you before. I was like, man, I'm going to start this rumor on the podcast.
Yeah.
Several people messaged us being like, is Tyler really racing Oceanside? Like people were like, oh, he's going to do so well, and I was like, I don't know whether I should tell them that it's a joke or what, but.
No, there's definitely some future there. We talked about it, like not on the podcast, but we talk, like you said, all the time. And one of the things about my training or my style of training is that I do quite high volume training. So similar, maybe not exactly the same as the Norwegians, but similar to the Norwegians where I do quite high volume. So I think I actually wouldn't even add much volume probably if I went to 70.3. I would just add it probably differently how I train. So it wouldn't even be that much of a shock to the system. It would just, I think the TT bike is a whole another game that I'm not experienced in yet. But it's interesting to see definitely like all these short course guys in their first few years here do really well. What I'm interested in, which is also like when you see a change, let's say someone changes coaches and you go from a coach where you're used to very high intensity, you change to a coach who's doing a lot of volume. A lot of times you'll see an athlete race really well within the first year of the new program. And it's usually because it's a mix of both the trainings. It's not one or the other. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Norwegians, if they go long for like over time, what happens if they lose a bit of that speed and if they become better with experience, or they start to lose that speed and lose that edge that they're coming from that ITU background. It'll be interesting to see that. You just see it so much with coaching and athletes, and when they make a switch, an athlete usually has their best year within the first 2 years because it's a mix of a new stimulus. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Well, you've spoken about the Norwegians, and while we're not here to talk too much about the Ironman World Championships, Kristian Blummenfelt won the Ironman World Championships over the weekend, had his second ever Ironman, and like winning on debut at a World Championship Ironman is like I think only one person has ever done it before, which was Van Leerd. Was it Van Leerd? I can't actually. I've said that. I could be wrong. What are there whispers amongst the short course guys about like, oh, he's done, he's stuck, like, oh, if we don't have to worry about Kristian anymore, he's a long course guy now, he's staying long? Or like, is it the opposite where people are, there always sort of has been that very traditional, you do short course while you're younger and faster, and as you get older and slower, you level up. Do you think that maybe there are athletes in, your peers who are starting to go, shit, maybe I could do that too? Or like, are there whispers or anything or discussions about it? What's the sense of it?
So we had an interesting conversation the other day in my household. So I trained with 4 or 5 guys, and we were running house in Phoenix. And when he won, I asked, well, who do you guys think is the best triathlete of all time? Do you think Kristian's in the conversation already? And all of them said no, that he wasn't in the best conversation or the best yet. Obviously, he's one of the best to do it. And I already think that I can see him being the best. He's a phenomenal athlete. And if anyone can come back to short course and take a non-traditional route, I wouldn't doubt that it would be him. I mean, who no one else has done in history where within 12-month period has won an Olympic Games, which you're running 29 minutes for 10K. You're having to swim the pants off right over 400 watts, and then you're able to go settle into an Ironman pace. I mean, he broke the world record. What was that? Within 6 months of the Olympics? It's pretty much unheard of. Like there's no one ever being like Kristian, and we may never see a Kristian again. It's kind of like, like an athlete, you don't realize what you're watching until it's too late. They talk about like LeBron James in the NBA, like people take him for granted. We're watching him now. And then when he's gone, people will be like, damn, I didn't realize we were watching one of the greatest, to do it of all time. And I think that's when you're talking about Kristian, you're talking about someone like that.
You see, it's funny you say that because I mean, I could do a whole interview with anybody about this, like, does this change the greatest of all time conversation? But the thing I think that people need to be aware of Kristian immediately right now at this exact point in time to avoid what you're saying is the fact that he's 28 years old and he could potentially, if he could win 10 of these things. Like we could literally see a guy who, if he wanted to do something, like we're already seeing history because as you said, nobody's ever done this before. And by appreciating that now, rather than there always being this conversation around, oh, but it's not this, oh, but this doesn't, going, okay, wow, this is something amazing. Let's start to like actually look at what could happen. Potentially he could go to Paris and win another gold medal after having won Ironman. And then it could go like the script is unwritten in this situation, I think. And I think it's a very, I think I'm looking at this going, like, I want to be present, understanding what we're seeing. But I think a lot of people will do what you say, go at the end, go, shit, that was pretty impressive, actually. I don't think we realized how good this guy was until
Yeah, well,
he's
we're already
done.
doing it. Everyone's talking about what's he going to do next. It's like, look what he just did. Man, take a second to appreciate that. That is absolutely wild. And this is coming from me, right? Like I'm a triathlon peer. I'm not an Ironman, but like this is the guy I raced at the Olympics and like one that if I was healthy in my head, I was going to be running against to win a medal. So I think that's also a thing is like from an athlete perspective, it sometimes is hard for athletes to admit how someone good someone else is because they think it takes away from what they're doing. But you know, me saying Kristian is one of the greatest to ever do it, I don't think takes away anything from what I'm doing or what I'm trying to reach, or it doesn't make me believe that I even can't beat him in Paris. Like I still believe that, you know, I wouldn't be racing if I didn't think I could go and challenge him or challenge whoever. But it doesn't put that aside, and that conversation still happens, you know.
One of the things I was having a chat, I was at the finish line. I was having a chat with his agent, Adam, just like literally minutes after Kristian had won it. And Kristian, you know, Adam was saying like, and I was agreeing with saying like how good this is for the sport. You know, we've got this sort of new, you know, the old guard in long course racing, the Jan Fredinos, the Sebastian Kienleys, those guys are sort of starting to get to the twilight of their career. Looking at, I mean, Sebastian's announced his retirement. Jan's probably going to retire at the end of this year. Like we have this new wave coming through. And I was saying to Adam, and I think this applies to somebody like yourself, is the reason you guys and the Kristians and all that are the way they are is because of the Ali Brownleys, because of the Jan Fredinos, because of the Javier Gomez's. They forced that new generation to come up and lift their game. And what I'm already starting to get like, holy shit, is if this is what we're seeing now, what's next? And I think that's like these guys are forcing everybody to lift their game. Like you just even have to look in age group racing, the number of people who do lactate testing now have got their little lactate monitors that they take out. Like when people become, when there is suddenly a significant shift or change or boost in performance, everybody plays catch up and then they go beyond that. And that's what also gets me really excited thinking, okay, we're seeing this now. What's next? And that's not to say like I'm impatient for it, but it is just that, I guess, appreciation that this standard is never going to be like, we're always going to see incremental improvements over time. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, well, we're in it right now. I mean, the depth of competition on the men's and females side is absolutely insane. I mean, you go back to Tokyo Olympics, like I was, I think, a minute down or something like that, and I finished 15th place over an hour 45 race. Like when you, if you're talking, you know, back to 2000 when the Olympics first came in when Simon won, I don't know the exact times, but I can guarantee you that 15 guys didn't finish within a minute. I bet you the podium finished within a minute. So if we're looking at that now, what are we looking at? Are we looking at in an Olympics in Paris, probably maybe 15 guys within 40 seconds or 30 seconds? Like that's insane. You train your whole career to, you know, for an hour 45 event to miss a medal by probably 15 seconds in your 15th place. That's out of this world. I mean, it just shows like the closing of competition. I mean, it's the same way in every sport. The closer the gaps get, the more exciting it becomes, but the smaller room for error you have as well.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I think, if you really start to look at the sport, and I think you can see the growth of triathlon as a sport, as its own sport compared to a sport that involves three sports, is the splits that you guys do. Let's look at short course at the moment. Like you guys are running sub 30 minutes for 10Ks. You guys are riding crazy high watts or, you know, well under an hour for that 40K bike split. And then like you're almost swimming, you know, you're capable of probably, you know, doing well at like 1500 meter Olympic trial sort of things. Like the level in triathlon now, professional athlete, is so high compared to the solo sport athletes. Like, I mean, you know, I think there was a 105 half marathon done in a 70.3 the other day. You've got people, you know, 102, I think it was Morgan Pearson's half marathon when he did the US minutes. Nationals. Like it's that gap is so like, it really does show just how good guys like yourself and other professional triathletes are. Like, I think we sometimes, like, we don't always look at things in that sort of context. And when you actually do, you sit there and go, fucking hell, all right, these are legitimate athletes. It's not that case of, oh, they're a triathlete because they're kind of crap at three sports. It's like, no, they're very good at all three sports and they can hold their own at each of those sports individually. Like it is.
The thing with ITU too,
it's a real.
I'll just like add this in quickly, is that if you probably took the top 10 athletes who are swimmers in ITU, the top 10 athletes who are cyclists, and the top 10 athletes runners, like individually within that sport, they could all do it professionally probably to a lesser extent in those individual sports. Like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like Alex E, Hayden Wild, these guys, like they're track stars, you know, the same way some of these guys cycle. It's like they could ride pro team, maybe even some like low level world tour. Like there's the margins are so small now.
I know. Which would you pick, mate? Which if you were going to be a pro swimmer, biker, or a runner, what would it be? Runner, swimmer, biker?
Well, definitely not swimming. I'll tell you that one for free. I think the biking.
You're pretty good, mate. You're right.
Yeah, I like swimming, but like just not staring at a black line for 20 hours a week. That's what you got to think about is the training, right? Like you got to enjoy the training. Yeah. What I actually would find cool is like being on a cycling team, just because I miss that team factor. I grew up playing like hockey and soccer, basketball. I really miss the team aspect. You get a bit of it through the relay, but I think rolling around with the boys and just, laying yourself on the line for that. I've done a bit of cycling racing, but not professionally, obviously. And I love that.
I'd love to see it. Well, look, we are here to talk about some professional racing. We got you on to talk about two things. We're going to do a bit of a recap of the arena games, and then we'll talk a little bit about this weekend's Yokohama race. What do you want to start with, mate? Should we go to Yokohama first and have a bit of a chat around that, and then we can look at Super League? Or
yeah, I mean, this is your show. I'm just guest James Bale.
You got, yeah, you look very similar to him. Let's start with Super League. So I've watched the highlights of the men's race. I haven't seen the women's race yet, but you've watched both of them. What did you think about it, mate? We've got two new world champions in Beth Potter and Alex Yee. Thoughts?
I mean, we already knew they're both studs, right? Like they run the pants off anyone. I mean, when Beth broke unofficially the world record 5K on the road, so
14:40.
Yeah, I know, probably quicker than me at that moment in time, but that's regardless. But yeah, I mean, it's something different. What was cool in Singapore was I liked that they did the swim outside. I really like that a lot more than the pool swim because again, there's a bit more tactic, finesse race versus being in your own lane. I mean, it is a race. It's just a different style of racing. I think that across. When you're on the treadmill, again, there's less of a tactic and more just, run as hard as you can. And when you're on the bike, especially with no drafting now, they've taken that away. So it's kind of just ride as hard as you can, run as hard as you can. So at least with the swim, there's a bit of tactics added back in. And that's what draws me to triathlon, like personally, is like the gamemanship of triathlon, that making it a game, trying to get your most out of yourself. Because I think most of the races that I've won, or done well in, I don't think I've actually been the best physically, but I've been able to get the most out of myself and work that advantage. So I think adding the swim outside gives people that bit of advantage, that draft factor. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, it's one thing will be cool is to see where they go with this. I know it's super hot in Singapore because they had to ride outside, but whether they can add more to it or I mean, Super League's always one up in themselves. So it'll be exciting what they do next year. What are your thoughts?
I also really liked I liked the fact that it's a swim because very similarly, the issue I sort of have with arena games is that it's more of like an individual time trial rather than a race. Like it's just a series of athletes who all go and do their own swim, bike, run or bike, whatever the order is. Because you say there's not really there's no need, like especially with the drafting feature turned off on Zwift, there's no real incentive. Like why would you try to bridge up the gap if you're not going to get the benefit and things like that? So I think that's lacking. But then I was wondering about this because I did like it, but I'm thinking if this is a World Championship series and the first two have been a pool swim, in fact, every arena games before this had been the pool swim, and say you're an athlete who is a better pool swimmer than an an open water swimmer, you'd maybe be a little bit annoyed that it's almost like they've sort of changed the game on you at the 11th hour. And I was like, yeah, like if you're like, oh, man, I've got this arena games thing down pat, I'm going to win this thing. What? It's an open water swim, but I can't sight for shit. Like I thought that was a little odd. And then I looking at it, I'm like, well, fuck, they could almost have just done it out. Like it could have just been a triathlon. Like, I don't know, for people who are familiar with Singapore, Marina Bay is almost like a 5K lap and it's all passed. So they could have done something really cool where they could have actually hosted a really cool little triathlon there rather than like doing the swim and then they run up and they're just sort of on a stage. It was a little, I guess it is a bit odd, and it's a bit like, okay, what are we doing here? Are we going to the esports angle? Are we going the triathlon angle? I did find that, like, I was actually surprised when I saw that it was an open water swim because I just assumed it's a pool swim always. It's going to be at the pool near Marina Bay. But I mean, I think looking at the results, I'm not surprised that Beth Potter got the title and Alex did because he's done most of the races. But Yeah, I don't know. Like I love Super League, and I've always really, the last few years I've really liked Arena Games, and I've not watched it this year. Like I've actually not watched any of the races live, and it makes me go, did I like the Arena Games in the last years because we had nothing else to watch? And now that we have so many more races that are back to normal, coming back, am I sort of losing interest in the Arena Games? Like, was it like a lightning in a bottle? Was it something that was only good during the pandemic, and now that we're sort of back to regular racing, is it going to drop? I'm not sure. Because I've really not followed this super closely, if I'm honest. All right, because the internet is always a great part of our life, but sometimes it provides us challenges. We are actually back, Tyler, because we lost about 3/4 of the interview that we recorded yesterday. And I know that we recorded probably the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts. I thought it was so good. We're going to try to get you back to capture some of the goodness. Now, we were talking about the Arena Games. I think we sort of summed it up. It happened. It was fine. There's some good racing. But what we're keen to talk to you about now is Yokohama. We've got the first round of the 2022 World Triathlon Series. It is actually not the first race. It's the first race of the year, whereas we had some last year. But Yokohama's this weekend, mate. What are your thoughts about this race?
Well, I think me, along with the rest of the ITU athletes, are just pumped to be back. You've had a lot of long-distance racing, non-draft racing. So it's just nice to be back. I think that's the sentiment among everyone. One of the cool things is when you have this long of a layoff, I mean, last race was November 5th in Abu Dhabi, you got 6 months, is that a lot can change. You know, a young athlete like 20, 21-year-old can kind of reinvent themselves completely and they can come out a new athlete. The same way an older athlete can maybe find some sparks they haven't had in a while or get healthy or take care of some stuff. So, you'll see a lot of the same athletes, I'm sure, but I'm sure you'll see a few new faces. Who those are, I have no idea because I'm kind of over there in North America doing my own thing, and Europe I don't hear too much other than the old social media, which can't be trusted too well.
Now, again, I'm going to probably do this a lot during this bit because we did talk about so much of this stuff yesterday. But one of the points you were making yesterday was about we are in a post-Olympic year, and what you'll see in that post-Olympic year is some new people sort of step up, and some people who we thought maybe are had a big year last year might start off a bit rough or come back. So who do you think the people are that, I guess, what are your thoughts around that? Because I've heard it before, but what are your thoughts around that sort of post-Olympic year impact?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see it like every Olympic cycle. That's what's kind of cool is that new faces emerge, but also that post-Olympic year. I mean, usually we're dealing with it 3 years out. What's the biggest thing now is that Olympic qualification starts within a month for the next Olympics already. So it's a little bit less time to have an off year if you're choosing so. But I mean, in sport training, especially at the highest level, I think one of the biggest things that's underestimated or not valued is that intensity or fire to be the best. And I think some athletes just have it all the time, but a regular athlete, that kind of flickers, or the flame burns hotter and it cools at periods in your career. And like someone who maybe had an off year for themselves, someone like a Vincent Louis who didn't perform to what he would have, his expectations, still a great year, but for him, not a great year. You might see that flame reemerge and him have a phenomenal year, someone like that, versus, someone who's maybe an Olympic medalist. Kristian didn't do this, but maybe someone else is Olympic medalist, has the media burden, or, that they filled that goal is, you have that downward trajectory. I mean, after the 2016 game, I came 15th. I was the youngest guy in the race. And that was my dream. I never as I got into sports, dream was to go to Olympics. I never thought a medal was possible, never thought anything. So like, for me, I had that lull that year after, kind of just like, what do I do now? I've accomplished this huge goal. And, what's next? It's the hard part in your sporting career. So yeah, I'm excited to see the new fellas. Nervous all the time because, as I get, I'm 27 now. So I'm entering my golden years, but so any new athlete becomes a threat for myself. So good and bad.
The other thing we always see after an Olympic cycle is the way that some athletes will sort of start to transition into the longer stuff. I mean, I think we're starting to see there's probably a list of athletes who we could say are starting to move more into that long distance racing. Who are the people that you think we are going to see them racing less short course stuff moving forward than they have in the past?
Well, it's hard because I think you can cycle in and out. Like Van Riel is a good example. He's already raced, early this year. He rode and ran the socks off everyone. And I think it was Dubai, correct?
Yep.
Where he broke the record.
Correct.
And, but you can cycle in and out. It just depends on your training. So like someone like him or like myself, I train quite high volume. I know Martin does as well, and Norwegians do. I think it's easy to bounce in and out. The thing is managing the TT bike, because it is using slightly different muscles and slightly different recruitment riding that bike. I mean, we've seen like stuff online that Vince rides a TT bike. Some of the times these guys in Joel's squad ride their TT bikes some of the time. So it's interesting to see them dabble back and forth. I think, yeah, that whole Girona squad of Joel, I think you'll see them all start to dabble in the long course in the next few years. Again, it's the thing to managing, because you're still riding a bike, but it is different. It's the same way like Ironman guys don't ride their road bikes all year, because it doesn't really, like, it's a different muscle group. Yeah, it's general fitness, but it is a different sport. I think on the women's side, more specifically, you'll see a lot of the older athletes who maybe like a Flora, some of these Jess Learmouth, the veterans really transition. I think you'll see more women enter from the ITU in the next few years than you will men. That's just my opinion, though.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's talk about the women then, because the women's race, I mean, both races have got a really stacked field. But if we go through the start list for the women's, you've got athletes like Laura Lindemann, Flora Duffy, Georgia Taylor-Brown, Taylor Knibb, Cassandra Beaugrand, Beth Potter, Maya King, Manali Van Corven, Taylor Spivey. Like, there's a lot of class names on this list, mate. So, how do you see this women's race going?
All of those names you just listed, there's probably like 7 or 8 of them who are rock star swimmers. So I think that sets it up to be a bit of a breakaway here. How many girls? I don't know. It depends how hard they charge out a transition. But I mean, last year we seen Nib and, fan favorite Kingma from Mana here have a break. So I imagine those two with a few others might tack on and, charge. I think Flora never shows up to a race unless she's in shape. It's kind of like, Prime Alistair when he was doing ITU. Anytime he raced, he didn't race that often, but when he raced, it was like, well, the guy's either going to win or die trying. And I think Flora's the same. Anytime she lines up, well, she has a really good shot at winning. She's not going to show up unless she's ready to smash it, So I can't see her being off the podium. Never say never, because it's triathlon. And one of the things to factor in, we talked about yesterday, was that it's supposed to rain. It's supposed to rain a lot. And they actually just sent out a possibility of changing the course slightly.
Oh, wow.
This course goes on cobbles normally for part of the section, which here it's a death sentence, especially when the rain. There's a lot of oil on the road in Japan. So when it rains, oil come out and become super slippery. On top of that, there's a lot of white lines. So, I mean, that goes both ways. That can shatter a field apart or bring it together depending on, the risk. We talked about too, is that as a younger athlete, you might be willing to take a bit more risk than someone like a Flora Duffy, who has a whole year in the World Championship she's pining for. You have a little bit less risk. You want to win, but you're not willing to die trying, which some of these young athletes are, which is, again, why you see a lot of crashing in like Continental Cups or World Cups compared to WTSs, because they're going with the mentality of like, I got to prove myself to my national federation. Some of these athletes are racing their first WTS. My training partner, Martin Sobey, first WTS. We have a comm game selection, top 12 is automatic selection. Like, that guy rides or dies on 12th, right? He might be willing to take some risks in the rain that other people aren't, because it can change his life, versus it might not change my life whether I'm 15th or 12th or 15th or 9th. Obviously I'd like to be higher, but it's not going to change my life. A result like that for him can change his life, right?
Exactly. So you've said you think it's going to be a strong swim, but we're going to see the conditions impact the bike for the women's race. Let's look at the men's race. So on the men's, you've got some, like, again, great athletes: Leah Berger, Vincent Louis, you've got Pierre Lecour, Tyler Mislawchuk yourself, obviously, Vasco Valasa, Hayden Wild, Alex Yee. Who else is there that I'm noticing? Martin Van Riel, Dorian Connix, Matty Howes is there, Matthew McElroy. Yeah, mate. Look, there's, again, lots and lots of depth on this men's race. What do you see happening with the men's?
Yeah, I mean, it's a stacked field. I think you're basically just missing the Norwegians, which have gone long now.
Yep.
And I'm not really sure. Actually, seen Casper Stornes has pulled off this start list as of 2 days ago. So you're going to have no Norwegians in the field, which is a big shakeup. And we talked about it. Those guys are game changers in the race, because they get in their TT bars and they drag the whole race back. They obviously have a bit of help from the chase group. Like, he can ride, Wild can ride, Burt Whistle can ride. When Geens is in the race, he can ride. All these guys, I'm probably missing a few, but all these guys can ride. But the Norwegians are usually the driving factor of a chase group, and I think that makes it different. I don't necessarily think it will stay apart, but the effort required by the guys coming from the back is a lot higher, and that takes a toll on your run legs. It can't not take a toll, riding an extra 20 or 30 watts to get to the front.
I think watching, I guess, it's obviously different for you being in it, but myself watching the race, I've noticed that when those Norwegian guys, particularly Kristian, in that chase group, you can really, like Kristian in short course racing reminds me a lot of Alistair in the sense that he's the one barking the orders. He's the one yelling at the other guys to be like, pull your finger out, like take a pull. And I think what you say is really like interesting to see with those sort of guys out. What is that going to mean? Are we going to see more of those breakaway groups at the front get away or stay away for longer? And are we going to see those guys that have to chase ride that a bit harder? Like what impact it's going to have? It's super fascinating to me to see how this is going to shake out without those guys in the field.
Yeah, I mean, Kristian is the same as Alistair in that he's good at motivating around. Like as soon as Alistair's in the front group, that group has a chance of staying away. I remember before selection last year for Tokyo Olympics, I was hoping Alistair was going to get selected because it was going to benefit me the most. For him being in the lead group, being a swimmer myself, being up there, I knew that he's strong on the bike, but he's one to yell at everyone and get everyone motivated. I mean, the first race I did last year in Lisbon, I rolled up to Kristian, just got onto the back of his group, had a bad swim, and first thing he did was yell at me to take a turn, and target you, not just to come on. He looks you right in the eyes and goes, "Come on, Tyler, is that all you got?" Hits you with something that makes you want to ride hard and be like, "All right, I'll go show this guy."
Amazing. So we'll see that. We'll come down to we got some really good runners in the field. You said something to me yesterday that I wasn't aware of, was the fact that Vincent Louis only done how many Olympic distance races, like 4 Olympic distance races in his career or something like that?
No, so he's done a ton, but I think most of Vince's wins have come from
wins. Sorry, okay,
distance.
Yep.
Most of his wins have come from sprint distance WTSs. I mean, he's a stud at ITU and Super League. Like, I think he's probably, I don't know with Super League, but he has the most wins by far, and he has, I don't know how many wins in ITU and sprint distance, but it's significantly less at Olympic distance, and I don't know if that's just by chance of racing less or timing or, triathlon is so much dumb luck. At the same time, you can be in the best shape, but you have all this stuff wrong. So it'll be interesting. I mean, what happens now is that maybe in Olympic distance with these Norwegians gone, it goes back to suiting some swimmers before, because kind of what's been happening in the Olympic distance last few years is just going to end up being one big group because the group has 40K to chase. Versus the sprint distance, we've seen, a few breakaways over the last time. I think, what was it, Hamburg 2 years ago was like Kristian, Van Riel, and Louis on a break, maybe Brownlee too. And you don't really see that as much in Olympic distance racing. But that being said, we might be in a changing of guard here. I could be wrong, but we'll see.
No, I'm excited to see. And then the other athlete that we touched on yesterday was Martin Van Riel, who's had an interesting start to the year with that incredible Dubai performance. We know that Martin made a change to his coaching at the start of this year. And then he's had a few sort of interesting performances at the Super League Arena Games, something that we know that he was so good at last year. Basically, tell me what you told me yesterday about why you think that might be for Martin, what we can expect to see from Van Riel.
Yeah, well, there's a few factors with Martin, right? Like when you change a coach, it's always interesting. I think a lot of athletes have their best year when they change their coach because they're mixing two dynamics. So Martin might be mixing a bit of Joel's training and a bit of his new coach's training to get that ultimate performance in Dubai, because you're not, you carry every year in the sport that you do. They don't just disappear. They don't call it old man strength for no reason. But one of the things I think is and this is speaking from personal experience, I know he's been up in the mountains, Sierra Nevada, 2,300 meters. You're not able to do a whole ton of speed work up there because you're just so limited in intensity control. So, I mean, if you're coming down for a day or two for arena games, I'll tell you what, if I came down from Flagstaff, I would have raced a busted ass.
Like a James Bale.
Although James would have looked better in his white tri-suit, no doubt.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think it's hard to judge them based on those performances. Like he won last year. It's not like he's not in good shape. He's always going to be in good shape. He doesn't really show up, kind of similar to other athletes, unless he's ready to race. But I know he's done an altitude with Joel before, but I see Sierra Nevada's maybe a bit higher than he's used to. I mean, for me, myself, I've been at Flagstaff, which is 2,100. And again, that's pretty similar to where he's been at. And it is an experiment. this last 2 weeks or last 10 days I've come off, I've had really good days and really bad days. And so we've been recording all that information, and you repeat it, and you go back up and you come back down, and you go, okay, is there a trend on certain days I'm racing well? Because then I'm going to race on those days and avoid the other ones, because I've had some god awful days in the last 10 days, and I've had some days where I feel superhuman. So trying to maximize that, and he might be in that testing phase as well. I have no idea what his training looks like.
Can you talk to us a little, because this is something that I'm assuming a lot of our listeners aren't that aware of or don't understand that much around, is around that, like, because we all know that altitude, you can, it's quite a fine balance, sort of getting it right. When you say about, like, some days you're good, some days you're bad, maybe you can talk to us just a little bit around what that process, like, I guess, what it's like up at altitude and what it is like coming back down.
Yeah, so I mean, it's super individual, and like a general consensus is that you should race within the first 3 days of coming down from altitude, avoid days 3 to 10, and then after days 10 to 21 are pretty good. You have that lull period, but basically the essence of altitude obviously is to increase hematocrit, which is like basically legal EPO. What's like you read about what they used to do in the tour all the time. And basically extends out your endurance. I mean, there's so many studies, but essentially, if done right, you can improve a 10K by, at our level, by 20 or 30 seconds in the bank, which is massive. And I know a lot of my competitors have been doing it for years. It's one of the things that I haven't done a ton of, so I can't speak too much on. But basically, every time you go to altitude, your heart rate's 20, 30 beats higher. Everything's harder. You're just working that much harder. But at the same time, you have to be really careful, because you can cook yourself quite easily. Going out for a 2-hour ride and your heart rate's 30 beats higher at the same watts, all of a sudden you come home and you're exhausted, whereas normally you could tick off another session. So monitoring in that is super important. I was just like that. Like Alistair was up there swimming in the lane beside me most days, getting ready for St. George. I know he's using a lot of his prep. Holly Lawrence was up there. Matt Mack lives up there. So it's what a lot of athletes are doing. And I think once you get up there, and I've done it quite a bit of times, it's such a huge advantage once you master. There's also the factor of altitude repeatability. So the more you go up, the better you get at it, the better response. So we measure like hemoglobin mass, all these terms, but in essence, what they found is the more you go up to altitude, which is what the Norwegians do 4 or 5 times a year, the better response you get and the harder you're able to train. So, I don't think those guys race any big races without going to altitude. And I remember telling one of my advisors, a new advisor that I hadn't done altitude really yet. And he was almost laughing, because he was like, how have you got to this level and not really done altitude? It's kind of like, he's from cycling world. He was like, it's a rite of passage basically as a cyclist. Like, you don't go race a big race without going altitude. You're just leaving so much on the table.
I love the thought that you see what's happening at the moment is so many people are trying to, like, so many amateurs are replicating what the Norwegians are doing because they think it'll work for them. Like, I've seen so many amateurs with their little lactic test kits and stuff, but I want to buy shares in that Sierra Nevada sports hotel, because I reckon every amateur in Europe is trying to book themselves in for a week of altitude training because they've seen the Norwegians doing it. But yeah, it's super.
I will say for amateur, don't go unless you're doing 21 days, because if you go for 7 days, you'll just get tired. I mean, you can go and just enjoy it and experience it. But if you're looking for a benefit, you need to be up there for at least 21 days. So get ready for 21 days in Sierra Nevada.
Well, let's
not much to do, but ride your bike.
We should start an investment idea, Tyler. So let's build a hotel up there with like only 3 weeks stay minimum, and we can just gear it specifically towards amateur triathletes. We'll make a killing, mate. It'll be awesome.
I think it's a good investment. James Bale will back us, won't he?
Definitely, and Macca. We'll get Macca involved. Your race this weekend, mate. How are you going to win this race?
The question everyone wants to know. I've worked a lot on my swim this last 6 months. Been a little bit more limited with my Achilles, so it's all healthy now. But I just have to kind of err on the side of caution and build it up over time. So I've definitely done a bit more swimming and riding. I'd say I'm a bit more well-rounded than I have been in previous years, which doesn't necessarily suit the Yokohama course because it's a flat, fast run course. So you might not see all my strengths play out in this race, but I'll look to just be up there in the front of the swim and hopefully ride with a group of guys that's smaller than the entire field and bank on that. I think I can have a great race, but I'll definitely be building throughout the year. Some of these guys will come out stomping, with a vengeance like we talked about. My plan will be built throughout the year, race healthy, and you'll see me on podiums, maybe this weekend, maybe not. we'll keep you guessing, eh?
I still think, mate, if you can do what you did at Abu Dhabi off like a couple of runs, I think we're going to see something pretty special this weekend. I'm not biased at all, but you love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, not many people know. When I raced Abu Dhabi coming off the Achilles injury, I did mostly Alter Gs, but I started running about 5 weeks before the event and was doing walk runs, and then got one. I had to do one run outside, so I did 5 by a K before I think it was 10 days before, and started at 3 minutes and ran down to 2:45 on the last one. And basically the next day, if my Achilles wasn't sore, I was allowed to race, and I was 10 days out. So I did that one session, absolutely knackered, and went to the race and kind of had low expectations and came sixth, which was quite surprising. So again, like you said, and what I've said earlier in the podcast is every training year you've done doesn't go away. So I may have run slightly less than previous years, but I've also been doing this for 10 or 15 years. And a few of those years I probably trained too hard and logged too many miles. So I might be banking on a few of those now.
Perfect. Well, Tyler, good luck this weekend. If people want to follow you, where do they find you online?
The real Mislawchuk, baby.
There's no other. Tyler, a pleasure. Good luck this weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bob.
I mean, he should go into punditry, shouldn't he, now that he's retired from triathlon?
Making his grand return, mate, to be honest. And again, I didn't realize this. Tyler sent me a message afterwards, but Tyler had a death in his family this week. So he's racing for his uncle this weekend. So, mate, absolutely all the best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing. When you have Tyler on, you don't get to necessarily talk about Tyler that much because we were talking about all the other stuff. But we love you, mate, and can't wait to see you absolutely dominate.
Yeah, get out in it, mate. Rip him.
Correct. What's next, Jimbo?
Welcome to the down low on the PTO.
Come on, mate. That was a bit mild. You could do better.
I'm feeling a bit lackluster. Oh boy.
I know. Come on, you just got to get that little 3 seconds of energy. Come on, mate.
So we've had some changes in the rankings. And after weeks of you and I moaning and grumbling that the performance at Cozumel didn't really do much to the rankings, we finally see Mr. Kristian Blummenfelt topping the men's rankings with a 41-point increase. So number 1 in the world at the moment is Kristian Blummenfelt. Number 2 is Gustav Iden. Number 3 is Lionel Sanders. Number 4 is Daniel Beckergaard. Number 5 is Jan Frodeno, the GOAT. Number 6, Braden Curry. Number 7, Florian Anger. Number 8, Sam Long. Number 9, Patrick Lang. And rounding out the top 10 on the men's side, Magnus Ditlev. What do you think of those rankings changes, old boy?
I think was glad to see Kristian finally get on top, where I think he should have probably been close to at the end of last year. Yeah, like I said, I was actually really, we talk about whether this is, I actually had a quick chat with Thorsten Rad, who's the guy responsible for the rankings on race day. And I was basically saying that the thing I like about it is it's something. And he's like, yeah, well, we know it's not perfect, but it's something. I was really there was excitement. I was checking the rankings every couple of days to see if they'd updated things yet, to see what this race did. And mate, I actually think looking at the rankings right now, they're pretty good, to be honest. I think you'd look at that and go, yeah, that's pretty much the best athletes in the world at the moment.
The question I've got is, how long do you think we're going to see the Norwegians and Gustav and Kristian sit in 1 and 2 in whatever order? Do you think that could be some time yet?
I think so. Well, again, you look at now. I believe there's a bonus. There's a buffer or something because it's a world championship, so you earn extra points. I hope, because if you look at those women's races, like Kat earned 124 points for her St. George performance. So I assume that there's a bonus or a boost or something for a world championship race. I'm saying that now. I actually don't know if it's true, because if it's true, I think we're going to see them up there for quite some time. I guess the unknown is we got the second Kona this year and whether the PTO races get extra bonuses, but I have a feeling we're going to see those two right up there. As long as they continue to race their 3 races a year, I think we're going to see those guys pretty high up there for quite some time.
I agree. And great to see Magnus in the top 10 as well now after his debut in Texas at the long course, because
he's the biggest loser of this. He went down 4 spots or 3 spots or something. So
yeah, he'll be back there. He's
of course.
I'd love to have seen what he could have done in this race, but we'll see.
Because mostly I just updated his deck literally a day ago, and it was at 7th, and then I've seen that. I was like, fuck, I've got to go and re-edit and re-download his deck. God damn it.
And on the women's side, obviously, back at number 1, Daniela Ryf, after an astounding performance. Number 2, Annie Haug. Number 3, Kat Matthews, up 3 places, mate, up 3 places from 6. Laura Phillip down 3 to 4. Lucy Charles-Barkley down 3 to 5. Taylor Neeb down 2 to 6. Skye Moench climbs 1 place into 7th. Emma Pallant-Brown drops 1 into 8th. Jenny Metzler stays in 9th and Paula Finley in 10th. So not a huge amount of change at the bottom of the ranking, top 10 there, but a lot of change at the top. I think after this performance, no one can argue that Daniela Ryf shouldn't be at number 1. Kat Matthews rightfully climbing up the rankings into 3rd place. In my mind, she's number 2 in the world now. So rankings may not reflect that yet, but they will.
Who's that? Sorry, Kat. Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. Danny's back where she belongs. What I think these rankings are showing is that they do sort of gauge the current climate a bit, because Danny was lower last year she was still pretty high, but she was having a bad run of form, and she's still quite high. Whereas this year she's had another great performance. She's back on top. And again, you look at the number of points they received. They earned a lot of points for this race. So that's why you've seen the significant changes. I think, it's like I said, I like it. I really like that we got this system, mate. I am concerned that it changes a little, maybe too often. I know that's funny because I say how I'm looking forward to it, but
no, it should.
I guess more because
it should change.
I keep writing that fucking decks.
It should react frequently. I think.
Let's take that statistic off our decks then.
Yeah, maybe. We just need an algorithm. Surely we just need an algorithm with an automatic update. Surely that's fairly easy.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good to see that, I think world titles should impact the rankings significantly, and that seems to have been the case here, at least, that all the athletes who got a podium have gone right up to the top of the rankings. I think that makes sense. So really, really good stuff. Do you know what else is good, James Bell? MX Endurance's podcast membership, where if you go to mxendurance.com/podcast, you can sign up for one of our podcast memberships. For as little as $3.40 a month, you get a whole suite of benefits, bonus podcasts, partner discounts, all sorts of stuff. You've heard it before, you hear it again. mxendurance.com/podcast. Now, I also know that Jimbo's not doing too well because of he's a bit stressed and he's had a rough time traveling. So if you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or visit MX Endurance on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at tford14 on Instagram, or you can follow James at bale.james85 on Instagram. Please get in touch with the show by going to podcast@mxendurance.com. You can review us on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast. You can do it in app. It helps us out. It's a great way to get other people to find the podcast. If you have any questions, concern, whatever, I think I've already said that. James Bell, I've definitely gotten lost somewhere along the line. Thank you guys for listening. James Bell, thank you for being on the podcast. We'll be back to our regular scheduled viewing next week. Until then, Jimbo, talk to you later.
Cheerio.